Welcome to Seeing Dead People, the mystery storytelling podcast with a clairvoyant twist.
It just feels like if I was standing there under that window, I would tell you a lot of energy would come off of it, and not just because of the pictures on the window, but because of the dead people that are roaming those halls.
Well, that's what
all of them are good dead people, if you know what I mean.
You're saying they're good dead people?
No, not all of them are, good people. Some of them aren't so good. Some they are justly accused.
And now, Radio Sydney presents Seeing Dead People, Episode 5, Who Haunts Old City Hall? So, hello, Darcy. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you doing, Nicola?
I'm really good today, Darcy. We've got, I think, a start of 2 really amazing episodes, and I'm really hoping that you're up for something a little different.
I am always open to something different.
I knew it. Okay, well, I shall begin. I'm a little betwixt and between about undertaking the next 2 episodes. I believe they will be riveting audio, but possibly much more disturbing than our previous shows, especially the subject matter that will be raised in the next episode. The shocking storylines for both episodes are directly linked, but as to how, I'm keeping back for the moment. As you listen, you may begin to appreciate why I'm unsettled as to the way these episodes are going to play out. Fortunately, Darcy is always game, and I know we're going to give it a go today, so thanks, Darcy.
No problem.
As you may recall, our format on Seeing Dead People is for me to send you the photographs relating to our current ghost story, just a short time before we chat, and you agree to usually only look at the pictures a couple of minutes before we begin or as we're doing the show. Today we're modifying this approach a little bit. Given the distressing situation experienced by one of our ghosts in today's discussion, I wanted to test and to take full advantage of your psychic skills by initially keeping you and our listeners partially in the dark. I have therefore held back 4 key photographs, which I will email you, Darcy, at the appropriate moment. This has made it a little more challenging for me to craft and to tell this gripping story, but I think you'll agree that my little bits of deception are worth it.
Just out of curiosity, the first one I have open, email number 1 with the old City Hall.
Yep.
That's not here.
No. Okay, so are you up for traveling across Canada to hunt down some new ghosts?
I am. I was actually hoping we'd go outside of the island this time, so this is perfect.
Good. Well, we're going well beyond the island. We're going way, way, way to the east. You want to have an idea where we're off to?
Well, I'm sort of, when you say east, I'm going to say, normally I would think of Ontario or New Brunswick, Nova Scotia.
Okay, well, you're right on with the first pick. We're leaving British Columbia, and we're reappearing in the capital city of Ontario, to the biggest city in Canada, bestowed with many nicknames, including Hogtown, the Big Smoke, and Toronto the Good. As you'll discover over the next few episodes, Toronto is a good spot for spooks and boasts many captivating and frightening tales of hauntings, apparitions, and things that go bump in the night and cannot be explained. So, Darcy, are you ready to have your skills as a psychic tested like never before?
Well, maybe on this show like never before, but I've already got goosebumps, so I'm sort of thinking I've been down this road before.
Okay, that's interesting. First, I knew you'd take the challenge, thank you. But before I begin, I'm going to ask you one question. Have you ever visited Old City Hall in Toronto?
I know I have been downtown Toronto to the archives, so unless they're in that building, no.
Okay, I do not believe they are. So you haven't seen Old City Hall, which is great. I sort of thought that, but I was hoping that you hadn't. Okay, so I shall begin the first in this 2-part series. Part 1 I've titled, Who Haunts Old City Hall?
A lot of people.
I bet you're going to find a lot of people. If you've ever swanned towards Toronto's Eaton Centre, you may have spotted a massive, chunky, russet and beige sandstone building highlighted by a soaring off-center 300-foot-plus high clock tower. Take a closer look, and you'll be impressed by the rounded arches, the multiple peaked turrets, thick stepped-in facade, and really creepy carved stone faces, whose distorted features are said to resemble and ridicule the city councilors who blasted the architect for cost overruns. Built over 11 years and finally completed in 1899, this amazing piece of Romanesque architecture was Toronto's third City Hall and is now affectionately known as Old City Hall. So Darcy, if you would, please have a gander at the first 3 photographs. They're all exterior shots of this building, 2 taken recently and 1 around 1907. Pretty impressive building, don't you think?
They are. I mean, the architect alone is amazing. And it makes me, like I said, I've already got goosebumps, but I think picture number 2 of the building is really the most significant because there's not a lot of, when I say modern day influence, I'm talking, let's say, from 1960 onward. I would say from 1960 to the time it was built, there's quite a few characters in this building.
Okay. Well, it opened up just in the turn of the century in the 1900s. So now, just for fun, if you'd have a look at the next 2 photographs, numbers 4 and 5, they're of the caricature-like faces sculpted into the tops of the columns. I'm just wondering if you get any spooks grinning there.
Oh, my God. Okay, first of all, someone had a really bad sense of humor.
Yeah.
But it makes me feel like anguish, like torture almost.
Really?
Yeah. It's like I feel like I should be in a medieval castle opposed to a city hall.
Okay. Well, upon completion, the City Hall was the largest building in Toronto and, believe it or not, the largest municipal building in North America. Yet during the 1950s, it was part of 20 acres of prime downtown real estate slated for demolition to make place for the aforementioned Eaton Centre. Thank heavens, a vociferous public outcry kiboshed that plan. The City Hall remains, only partially surrounded by Eaton's humongous glass shopping centre, and in 1984, Old City Hall was designated a National Historic Site. Even more importantly to us at Seeing Dead People, Toronto's Old City Hall is reportedly one of the most haunted places in the Big Smoke. Of course, this is where you come in, Darcy. Can you move on to photos 6 through 9? They're all black and white interior shots from near the turn of the century. I'm curious if you catch any glimpses of the reported apparitions or have any sense of any supernatural goings-on.
Well, in photograph number 6, I feel like I see people walking down the staircase, men and women. There's discussion going on. I'm not feeling terror at this particular time, but I definitely have a tightness in my chest. And in the wall, I can see a man's, like, tall, slender-shaped gentleman. And it's weird because his eyes look a little distorted, and his tongue is sticking out.
Oh, really? Do you think he might be one of those characters from the columns?
Nope. I think this is someone who may have died or was somehow connected, but I don't feel like he's a character from the column.
Okay.
Okay. Number 7.
Mm-hmm.
I see men in wigs. Like a judicial body talking.
Oh, really?
Okay. And I have an older lady, there's a mirror or a picture, and I can't really see the picture closely, but I would say the lady may have represented someone. I'm going to guess here and say it may be the royal family, and I can't see anything. It looks like, but I don't think it's the royal family. It's different, but she has some sort of connection to the City Hall. So it could have been maybe the wife of the guy who built it. And I keep hearing JJJJJ sound, and the W, so for me, it's John, Jack, James, Jim, and that could be a first and middle name, and this is totally separate, maybe connected to the architect or to a judge, but I don't think it's J as in judge. And William, Bill, Walter, and I'm picking up those names, and I just don't, and I'm picking from 7 and 8
Okay.
on those names. Okay? And then number 9, it's like, I feel a little nauseous when I look at number 9.
Tell the audience what number 9 looks like.
Number 9 is like a hallway with stairs coming down to it from either side and pillars holding it up. And I mean, the detail in the architect and the borders and edgings and everything is just amazing. And there's beautiful light coming into it, but it literally makes the skin on the back of my neck crawl as though I'm afraid to look any farther. Oh, my God, there's a guy on the staircase wearing robes. Look at that. Okay.
Say that again. There's a guy on the staircase, and he's wearing what?
Robes. Like robes. Like, you know, a judge, jury, I'm going to go a hangsman. And I just saw him. He just popped into the picture and left.
Oh, cool. Okay, so he's wearing a black robe like a judge would wear.
Black robe, but there's a white tie or something, like something that goes down the side. Or a priest. That's what I'm thinking of. A priest. Someone who's giving last rites.
Okay, and you see that in image number 9 on you did anyway, in image number 9 on the staircase.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
cool.
I have a little bit of a, like it's like a shadow. It's like I should know it, but I can't seem to see it in my mind's eye clear enough to know what I'm supposed to be looking at.
Oh, okay. No problem. So how about we'll move on then to the next ones in a second. I'm just going to say in the building, in its 125 years in existence, it obviously housed Toronto's City Hall, including the offices of the mayor and treasurer, city council chambers, a police station, and for many years, right up to today, it's been used for something very different. But I'm not going to reveal that application just yet. However, I think you've pretty well nailed it yourself without knowing it. So I'm just going to ask you, Darcy, to look through the next few images, numbers 10 through to 15. They're modern interior shots. I wonder if you could tell us about any eerie vibes you're getting from them.
Okay, just 1 second, because my computer... Just a minute, I have to find them on the other one.
That's okay. So we're looking for number 10.
10 to 15. Okay. Well, I have to say number 10 reminds me of the Parliament buildings down here at the back of it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. There's got to be a connection somehow. Okay, obviously people have died here because that's the feeling I'm picking up. Number 11 is, I would say, like the courthouse itself, where the judge would come up, sit, and the stenographer and everything. And I feel there's, like, where people get a little anxious and they don't really want to go there. They want to stay away from it.
Okay.
Like, you know, I can't say really fear, but pretty close.
Okay.
And I would say that this is a room that maybe would be, like if I was doing a ghost tour, I'd probably take people to this room, as well as now that I've seen let's call it the foyer main entrance, number 12.
Yeah.
I mean, to look at it is beautiful. And all the people milling around, and I still see something at the top of I can see the 3 people at the top, but I still feel there's something else on those staircase that seem to be significant, as though someone's run away, may have been shot, killed, in a hurry to get out of there.
Okay, how about take us along to the next few interior shots, 12, 13, 14 to 15.
Okay. Well, number 12 was seeing the bold colors and everything, and seeing the person that was running away.
Okay.
13 is the beautiful stained glass window, which has lots of people inside the window. But do you know what this reminds me of? or the feeling I'm picking up, is if I was in the England and standing court. So it must have been an important place, not just for a city hall, but for other legalities.
Okay.
And there's a chest, just it looks like just under the window. Do you know whether or not it would hold someone's body or the remains of someone?
Well, I don't know, but I doubt they would have someone entombed in this building in that box, but I really don't know.
Okay. It just feels like if I was standing there under that window, I would tell you a lot of energy would come off of it, and not just because of the pictures on the window, but because of the dead people that are roaming those halls.
Well,
and
that's
not
what
all of them are good dead people, if you know what I mean.
you're saying they're good dead people?
No, not all of them are, good people. Some of them aren't so good. Some they are justly accused.
Ah, okay. Okay. Well, you're heading in the right direction. How about number 14?
Number 14, it's funny because it made me right away think of a museum. Okay, but do you know if anyone jumped off the top? It just feels like someone either jumped off that top floor, because there's two floors. There's the bottom, which looks like Italian slate,
Yep.
and then there's the top floor.
Yep. I
And
don't.
I still see the little person at the one top of the stairs. So if I'm looking at the stained glass window,
Yep.
it would be to my left.
And that's on the main staircase in number 14.
Yes.
Okay. And you're getting a sense that someone might have leapt off that second level onto the main floor.
They either leapt, they ran, there was a pursuit of some sort, because I can hear the thunder of feet.
Okay.
And the shouting, the confusion. And then number 15, it looks like a spiral staircase.
Yes, exactly.
And again, this seems like a secretive place where I would hold meetings that I don't want people privy to.
Repeat that.
It seems like a private place, like a place where I would hold a meeting that I don't want other people privy to. I don't want them to be listening in.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It's definitely representative of leading someone somewhere.
Okay. Well, at the top, as you noticed, I mentioned that this episode might be a little more disturbing than previous shows. So far, it's not been that much. That's okay. But now we're coming to the reason why, and I believe, Darcy, you've already divined the answer. What would you say this old city hall is being currently used as?
I would have said it was used for judicial purposes, maybe sentencing, making major decisions in. If I go back to, I think it was the first few pictures, number 2 in particular, I would have said that this is where I decide to execute people.
Okay, well, as usual, you're being incredibly perceptive, because Old City Hall has been a municipal courthouse for decades. So you spotted a judge, you talked about sentencing, you talked about people being chased. So you've mentioned a number of things that would have happened in a courthouse. Now I'd like you to look at photos 16 through to 19 and give us your reactions. Unfortunately for our listeners, I'm not going to be able to post 17, 18, or 19 to our Instagram feed because of copyright issues. But I think when you look at them, you'll see they're just photographs that aren't that astounding, but I think you might find some interesting things in them.
Well, which is the first one, number 16?
Correct.
16, so when people are looking, it's black and white, since they can't see it, and there's pictures, I'm going to think of former governor generals. They all look like men. lawyer or judges or something sitting at one point in this room, and it makes me feel like I'm a king and I'm doing, where I literally am passing sentences on people. And I also get the impression maybe royalty have been in. Oh, and there's a person literally standing by the window looking out.
Which photo are you looking at now, Darcy?
Number 16. There's an image of a face. I think it might be a man, and he's got a longer face because it looks like there's a beard, mustache attached to him, dark hair. He's wearing a white shirt, and he's Caucasian, and he's looking out the window.
And I'm looking at number 16, and for our audience, 16 is an image of an old courthouse or courtroom, and on the main wall are a bunch of photographs of men, it looks like, or sketches of men, and then there's a bunch of furniture, wooden furniture that looks like you're in a courtroom. So where are you seeing this gentleman?
Where the window is.
So the window's on the left-hand side of our photograph.
Yeah.
And what I see a window with a kind of a very faint-looking blind coming all the way down.
Yes.
I don't see a person there.
Okay, I can see a man standing there as though he's longing to get outside, and he'll stand there forever because I don't ever think he's going to go outside.
Oh, so he's trapped in that courtroom.
I would say yes, but it's a Caucasian gentleman.
Okay.
And it's funny, if you look at the chairs, I think those are chairs on the back, and they've got some sort of shape on them.
Yeah, they look like very fancy high back chairs for judges or something.
Yeah, and the one in particular, the one in the middle, makes me think of a lion getting ready to prance on people.
Oh, really? The chair does?
The chair does.
Oh, neat. Well,
so obviously that was the person who made the final decision.
Yes, and I would think that's evident as well from the fact that that is the chair that's elevated the highest.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now look at the newer ones. These are 3 shots of courtrooms of Old City Hall, courtroom 125. As I say, they're not anything different than perhaps you might have seen on any television show, with a courtroom with a lot of wood and a raised area for the judge and places for the jury and places for the spectators.
Yeah, I would say there's probably some spirits hanging out. And so courtroom 18 is just a judge's chair with then on the chairs for the barristers, and then behind that is number 19, and I know I missed 17, but I will go and find it.
Okay.
But 19 looks just like it. I would think it's the same area as the one picture, but it just doesn't have. If spirits there, they do a low profile in this room. Like, I'm not feeling them as strongly in the 2 more modernized areas.
Okay.
As I did in the other areas.
Okay. All right. Can you have a quick look at 17?
Oh, my God. 17 makes my heart race. It's maybe a little closer to the actual, without all the light, all I felt was death, death, death. Like, I don't know if people actually got a fair trial here.
You think that, eh?
Yeah, I feel like someone in this, whether it was in this particular room or one similar to it, I don't think he got as fair a trial as he should have.
Wow, that's really interesting. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the apparitions that are thought of reportedly being seen in Old City Hall. And you've mentioned one in particular.
I have another one.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. I have a gentleman who I would have said, to my first instinct, falsely accused of the crime he was lynched for, but definitely guilty of another crime. And I'm probably like the Irish white. Okay, he's got darker skin than I do. I would have said African American. He may have been sentenced to death because of killing someone, but I'm not sure he killed the person that they accused him of. And I want to say it's weird because I get both the L and the K sound around him. and I don't know if that's the first or middle name I'm looking for, but I am picking up that, and I feel there's something significant about his features. Okay, so my guess is he's either Aboriginal or African American or Canadian American, whichever way you want to look at that, since it's Canada.
Okay.
And I would say he's probably one of the biggest haunters. And because there is definitely a feeling of being choked, I would tell you this man was hung.
Wow.
And my light switch just turned on as I said it.
Oh, cool. You're being communicated with. Well, I got to say, Darcy, your perception just blows me away. So I will quickly tell you that the building is haunted by a number of apparitions. Okay, they've got sounds of moaning and crying, and they've got an attic where their strong presence is felt, and they've got a poltergeist, which, is a spirit that does funny things with physical disturbances, likes to pull judges' robes and make fun and maybe turn lights on and off. And there's been footsteps heard on the staircase. However, there's one individual in particular who's been reported or reputed to haunt courtroom number 33. Now, we don't have a shot of that particular courtroom, but I imagine it looks pretty similar to the ones we're just looking at. What is astounding here is that most of the supernatural incidents in this building happen in courtroom number 33. Rumor has it that every year one or more members of the press attempt to spend Halloween night in that very room, but so far no one has managed to do it. The most successful were a brave pair of journalists who made it to 4 a.m., but then booked it, freaked out by experiencing odd noises and cold fogs. So, before I give you the big reveal, Darcy, can you tell us anything about who you think might be haunting that courtroom number 33 of Old City Hall in Toronto?
Well, I'll tell you what, as you're telling this story, I have goosebumps so bad. It's like I can almost hear the moans and the pulling of the robe and the fact the lights go off and on, and that chill you get when you walk into a room that you think, oh, look, the heating's not working, but it's really not that.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is definitely male. I can feel the ladies who are crying because their loved ones are being sentenced to death or sentenced to jail or to the Queen's Court. Something to that effect is what I'm hearing.
Yep.
But this is the gentleman, the biggest person is the gentleman I described with the darker skin.
Yep.
The LK sound, LKN sound, LKM sound, and I feel like he was falsely accused. And that is why he's haunting it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you to undertake the big reveal. I'd like you to look at now for the very first time, open the email and look at photograph number 20 and tell us what you see and feel.
Well, Arthur Lucas and is number 20, and he's African-American, Canadian-American.
Right.
He strikes me as he should be a businessman, but I feel all this anguish around him, and I feel anger. I feel like, listen, you've got the wrong man. That's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
Now, I will say his eyes have that funny, creepy, the kind that makes you think of a sociopath, but his energy doesn't feel like that. He just feels like he's been beaten into submission. Pretty sure he was killed. Hung. Okay?
You're saying he was hanged?
Yep. He's the man who haunts 33.
Okay. Well, it's a very arresting photograph, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Very intense eyes.
Yeah, intense eyes. Well, Darcy, you are looking at the face of a convicted killer. Originally from Georgia, where he was raised by an aunt and uncle, the man in this photograph is a 54-year-old pimp and hired gun with a room temperature IQ, unfortunately, named Arthur Lucas, as you see. Lucas had been paid to snuff out Thurland Crater, a police informant who was hiding out in an apartment on Kendall Avenue in Toronto. Crater, who was nicknamed Checkerboard, was holed up waiting to give evidence for the FBI in a major upcoming narcotics trial. A low on the totem pole drug dealer, Crater had snitched on a high on the totem pole drug dealer and now had to testify against him in court. He thought he would be safe in one of the oldest neighborhoods in Toronto, the Good. Court records reveal that on November 16, 1961, Arthur Lucas left Detroit for Toronto in a borrowed pink Buick and eventually headed to Crater's safe house around 3 in the morning. Lucas had a dreadful job to do. His presence at Crater's apartment was confirmed by the fact that while there, Lucas made a phone call to his home in Detroit. Early the next morning, Thurland Crater was discovered dead in a torrent of blood in the downstairs hallway. He had been shot 4 times in the back with a .38 caliber revolver, and just for good measure, his neck had been ripped open from side to side. Upstairs, his wife, Carol Ann Newman, lay sprawled on a bed, her head nearly decapitated from a vicious throat wound. Unfortunately, the poor woman was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. One of Lucas's rings lay nearby, gleaming in a puddle of Newman's darkening blood. A .38 revolver, found elsewhere by police, was later matched to the bullets in Crater's body. Lucas gunned the pink Buick back to Motor City after the gory double murder, but U.S. authorities acted quickly upon Toronto police's arrest request. They were waiting for Arthur Lucas, and after arresting him, seized bloody clothing evidence from his car. Lucas was quickly extradited to Canada to stand trial. Arthur Lucas always denied the killings. He was tried on April 30th, 1961, with remarkable alacrity given today's sluggish court system. His lawyer, 29-year-old Ross Mackay, was young, bright, inexperienced, and lacked supportive resources. In fact, the Lucas trial was Mackay's first time defending a client charged with murder. Mackay did his best, even pleading for a change of venue, but to no avail. Arthur Lucas was tried in Toronto and convicted of murder in Court 33 of Toronto's Old City Hall. So, Darcy, you've talked already a bit about the man you suspected was haunting Court 33. Can you tell us more about Arthur and what happened to him?
Well, first of all, I want to state that I don't think he did the murder. I think he showed up after. I think he was he may have shot the guy after the fact, but I think both the wife and the gentleman who was found in the hallway were killed by someone else.
You do, eh?
I really do. And so I think he just plugged them full of lead to say it was done. But I felt like they were dead before he got there.
So you're saying Arthur Lewis came upon Thurland Crater after Thurland had his throat slashed and murdered, and then he shot the corpse?
Yes, I mean he devoured the corpse. But as you repeat what I've just said, I have goosebumps, which confirms I'm correct. But the thing is, obviously at that time they didn't have the same forensic information we do now.
Right.
And yes, he may have come up to do just that. But the reason he made a call home was because the guy was already dead.
So someone beat him to it?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
But I do know he's been hung because he is showing me the news. He didn't get lethal injection. This man was hung.
Wow. Well, you've taken the wind right out of my sails because you've divined exactly what happened. Now, what's really interesting, and we're going to move into, next week we'll be moving into the part 2 of this whole idea, is that Arthur Lucas was convicted of murder. He always denied he was not the killer. He was hanged in Canada, in Toronto. And before he was hanged, he continued to claim he was innocent, but he did say, I have done some pretty terrible things in my life. I'm not guilty of this crime, but I am guilty of many other crimes.
And that is what I said at the beginning.
I know. That's what was just ringing off my head here, that you actually said that before.
And like, I am goosebumps from head to toe because it was the truth. He was guilty of many other crimes and even defiling the body, he says. But he did not kill these people because he went with the intent of only shooting them. And the fact that their throat was ripped open was more a violent act. This is an act of silence. And that wasn't this man. Yeah, shooting, yes. Beating, yes, but not this savagery that went with ripping out the throat.
So generally one would say, ripping someone's throat out is a very personal way to kill somebody.
It is.
And it's incredibly close up and incredibly violent. You have to yourself do a lot to have that happen to another person.
Yeah.
Whereas standing back and shooting is something that a hired gun would do.
Absolutely. To me, he was going to shoot them. That's hence why they found the bullets. But I noticed they never found what ripped the person's throat out or decapitated the lady.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's really amazing, Darcy. Holy mackerel. I think that was a compelling revelation there. Very insightful on your part to sort of intuit that, or I guess you are getting some kind of discussion with Arthur yourself, that he was not guilty of this crime, and yet he did hang for it.
Yes, but as he fully admitted, he was guilty of others. So taking one's punishment, but he needed that clear record that he needed to be clear to the fact that he did not commit this crime, and that was why he had to say it just before he died.
Interesting. Wow. That's really, well, you've scooped me as usual. You figured it out before I was able to reveal it, so which is part of the game here, but it's astonishing that you've done that, because I was trying so hard, Darcy, to hold stuff back from you so that you wouldn't be able to divine it before I was able to tell you, and again, you've just beaten me to it.
You wouldn't by any chance, maybe during the research, heard the name Thelma?
Thelma?
Yes, Thelma.
No.
Yeah. Okay, I'm picking up the name next to him. So I wonder if it could have been someone who knew him, totally separate from the issue of killing someone. So I'll just leave it. Maybe I just have to do some little work here for him.
Okay, and you were as you were starting to visualize him, you had come up with some letters, and L was one of the letters, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I had EJNWL or
Yeah.
K.
Okay, well, Arthur Lucas was his name. Wow. Well, that's astonishing here, Darcy. You've nailed it. Now, I want to ask you one last thing before we get to our listeners' question. Thanks. This has been really, really riveting. Why do you think Arthur Lucas is linked to our next episode?
Oh, I want to say that it could be connected to a loved one or to a retrial of something or to another case or to Toronto itself.
Okay, all good answers, and we will find out next week next episode, what the actual answer is. So thank you very much. Anything else you want to say about Arthur Lucas?
Do you know if he had a brother?
I know nothing about his history. Not a lot of information about him.
Okay. All right. Nope. We'll see what happens next time.
Right. How about anybody else wandering around haunting City Hall? Anybody else popping up for you that's a little more prevalent than the ones that are just hiding in the background?
I would say whoever the architect is, and I'm going with the J sound, like James, Jim, Jeff, Jordan. He's there because he loved his handiwork. Okay, so I'm very proud of his work.
Okay.
But is there in the cellar of this, is that where they hung people? Or they kept people housed for centuries? Yeah, there's still people down in the cellar housed.
Well, yes, you're exactly right. They were the cell. They didn't hang people there, but there were cells in the basement of Old City Hall because it was originally, or was at one point in time, a police station, and they did have cells down there.
Oh, is that the same police station that they used on Murdoch?
I have no idea, but it certainly has the look of an old place. But I don't know what they've used for Murdoch.
Okay. Well, at least you knew who I was talking about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, well here's our listener's question for this episode, and this is from Rick. Now, Rick wants to know if you can tell us about a case that you've worked on with the police. Obviously, we don't expect you to give us any names or identifying details, but Rick is really keen to know what sort of thing you might have done, what kind of case you might have worked on with the police, if you can tell us anything about it.
Well, I can tell one that actually is interesting because the settings were, there was two. When a member asked me about a missing girl and a missing lady. They were both missing at the same time.
Oh, okay.
And one of them, and I crossed them over because I said one is like in a shallow grave, the other one I said is in a body of water, but I thought it was the old lady in the shallow grave and the young girl in a body of water. Okay. One was at a distance, which I thought was the old lady, and the other one was closer to home. Well, 2 days later, they found the young girl. She was in the U.S., and she was in the water tank on the top of an apartment building.
Oh, the poor thing. God.
And the old lady, and I had said, you're not going to find the young girl, but you'll find the young lady, because literally he was standing in front of me with both pictures. So the energy of the two people crossed over.
Oh, okay.
And they have yet to find the old lady, but at least they brought the young girl home.
Well, why did they show you two pictures at the same time of two separate cases?
Like most people, they were just testing.
Oh.
And he didn't think to do it separately. So I've now learned from that very lesson that if someone's looking for someone, I've got to do it separate. I can't try to do two things at one time.
Right. So do you think then you lost out a bit on the older lady because you weren't able to concentrate on her directly?
Yes. And then after they found the young girl, they brought the older lady picture forward, and it's like I couldn't pick up anything then.
Oh, that must have been heartbreaking for you.
It was because, it's always difficult to lose a loved one and you can't bring them home.
It must be very, very hard. Yeah. And I think it's interesting. They're always testing you. I guess it's hard for anyone to believe the kind of information you can discover from looking at photographs.
Well, and the other portion of it is, unfortunately, it's not tangible evidence.
Right.
So, they can't take it to a court of law. I mean, in the States, they can use it, but up here in Canada, it's not the same. You can't use that kind of evidence in a court of law. So when they come to someone like myself or any other psychic medium or medium that can look, they're doing it with the idea of maybe a fresh set of eyes, but it doesn't mean that they don't test you first.
Yeah, of course. And we would expect them to test you. I guess that would make sense. They shouldn't be gullible and just expect anybody could help them.
Yes. And I agree with it. I think either if I'm recommended by someone, then they should be open to the idea of that. But if they're just coming at me and saying, hey, I heard you can do this, can you have a look? Well, then I would expect them to test me.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, thank you, Darcy.
You're welcome.
It's been a fascinating episode, and I just want to recap because I really am struck at how you were able to beat me pretty early on here. You not only perceived it was a courthouse with judges, with sentencing, with people in the cellar, in cells. You were able to judge that, discover that long before I even brought it up or you were given the photographs regarding it. But then you were able to come up with the feeling of Arthur Lucas and the fact that he was African American, because I didn't say that and I wasn't going to say that. The fact that he said he was innocent, now that's not surprising. I think everybody probably pretends they're innocent or says they're innocent whether they are or not. But that you had, as you said, he had committed other crimes he had been guilty of, but he was not guilty of this crime. And you got, which I think is really remarkable, I got to put kudos out to you, you remarked that he had been hanged. Now that is really unusual because thank God we don't hang people anymore in Canada. But we did, and we hanged, I shouldn't say hung, you hang a person, and a picture is hung, a person is hanged, they say. But he was hanged in 1962. So you and I were alive when capital punishment was still part of the Canadian judicial system, which I really think is kind of astonishing.
Yes. Just out of curiosity, though, was he the last person in Toronto hanged?
You devil, I'm not going to answer that because you're again preempting my big reveal for next week.
Okay.
Okay? So how did you get that sort of idea?
I'm talking to his picture.
And what's his picture saying?
It's basically, I'm the example.
I'm the example.
Yeah, I'm the example.
And what do you take from that?
That people came up in arms about hanging people. The capital punishment.
And you're saying Arthur Lucas is telling you that he was hanged and his being hanged was a big issue in Canada and people were upset about it.
Absolutely.
And upset about capital punishment in general.
Yes.
You little dirty devil. You're scooping me every time today. Okay, well, I'm not going to carry that any further because we're leading into the next episode. But my goodness, Darcy, that's really amazing.
Well, I think I'm going to have a little talk with Arthur because it's time he moved on.
Well, please do that for him. I think must have been a tortured soul. Definitely when you and I have seen, and the listeners will see his photograph. I think you nailed it when you said he does have sociopathic eyes. There's no doubt the guy was a bad dude in many ways. But I think if you can help him move past what he's been through, that would be great.
Yeah. The feel that I'm guilty of other things, but not this, was so strong and it was so real.
Yeah. Well, you just, from my perspective, you got that right out of the blue. I mean, I gave you no clues, I gave you no indication, and I didn't give you any photographs that you could even cheat from until the last second. And yet you were able to feel that as we started to talk and carry out our conversation, it just got stronger and stronger for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good. Okay, well then I shall let you go. Funny, Toronto's calling me. No kidding. On my phone it says Toronto, Ontario.
Get out of here. Well, go answer Toronto the Good, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye. Well, I got to admit, I'm gobsmacked. My head is spinning as I go over the number of insights Darcy had during this episode. I was certain I was going to surprise her and even force her to admit that she didn't know key elements. But as you heard, I was dead wrong. So let's just break down what Darcy did know, because I really believe today we heard something remarkable. Darcy mentioned a black-robed figure appearing on an empty staircase in photo number 9. Then added she could see something like a white tie down his side and thought priest, and then said, someone who delivers the last rites. You now know how very telling this suggestion was for this episode, and have heard the hinted reference regarding the next. Darcy almost immediately suspected that the old city hall was used as a court and courtrooms, before she'd even seen half of my photos. She correctly said the building was a place where executions were decided, and she was right to note that people were held in cells down below in the cellar. All of that is startling, but my mind was totally blown when Darcy began revealing so much about our main ghost, the man rumored to haunt courtroom number 33. She first noted hearing the L and K sounds around him. As we now understand, his last name began with an L, Lucas, and the last name of the man he was accused of killing was K-sounding Crater. Darcy added she was also hearing the letters M or N, and Crater's unlucky wife was Carol, K sound, and Newman, N sound. She did mention hearing JJJs, but that didn't seem to have any relevance. But really, even more mind-boggling, Darcy nailed Arthur Lucas as being an African American, unjustly accused and convicted. But she also echoed Lucas himself, saying he had said he was guilty of other crimes. All this Darcy figured out before she even saw photograph number 20. Once she'd seen the photograph of Lucas, Darcy knew he had been sentenced to death and had been hanged because of a choking feeling, and said that the terrifying-looking man in photo number 20 was showing her a noose. The thought of hearing and feeling this is horrendous. I don't know how Darcy can calmly carry on a convo with me while having a quiet tete-a-tete with a deceased convicted killer. She also claimed Lucas was falsely accused and suggests that's why he's haunting courtroom number 33. Well, he's certainly thought to be one of the ghosts hanging around Toronto's old City Hall and in that exact room. And lastly, Darcy came up with an alternate storyline, one which I have to admit makes sense. Why would a hired killer get up close and personal and slit a man's throat, only to then step back and blast 4 shots into his back? Wouldn't you just love to go back in time with a forensics team and conduct a proper investigation and autopsy? Would it reveal that Thurland Crater had bled out from a throat wound? Would the coroner discover that the 4 bullets matching the found .38 revolver had ripped into a dead body? Of course, we'll never know, but it makes one think, don't it? I thought this episode a cracker and can't wait for the next one, where the story of Arthur Lucas's last days meld into another chilling Canadian ghost story. And maybe, just maybe, I'll outmaneuver Darcy. We hope you've enjoyed listening to Seeing Dead People. Whatever's going on in Darcy's head, I think is so cool and astonishing. We'd love to hear from you with questions for Darcy about her psychic process or suggestions for other mystifying situations you would like us to investigate. So please, shoot us an email to info@radiosydney.ca with Seeing Dead People in the subject line. New episodes of Seeing Dead People will emerge on the first Saturday of every month, and will also be available every Saturday night at 8 p.m. and Sunday morning at 10 a.m., both Pacific Standard Time. Seeing Dead People will also be available as a downloadable podcast online at radiosydney.ca for your convenience. Thanks so much for listening to Seeing Dead People. I really dig researching, writing, and communicating with Darcy and her otherworldly contacts. So until the next time, remember, Seeing Dead People is a blast, with goosebumps guaranteed.
This has been a program of Radio Sydney.